Hello, welcome, welcome.
Well,
How are
it's
you?
nice to finally actually meet you, sort of, because I think we've been sort of aware of each other for a few years now, but
Yeah.
we've never spoken.
No, I think there is some overlap points, but we can get into that, I think,
Okay.
potentially. In that case, I will welcome to Yelling at Concrete podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming. As I say to most guests, I'm terrible at introducing people. So, who are you? Please introduce yourself.
Oh God. um, sorry. My cat's just trying to climb on me.
Won't be the first time that's happened on this podcast.
so, so I write under the name J.L.Corbett. That's what people know me as on the internet. I guess I'm a writer, kind of editor. I run my own magazine called Idle that just takes up my whole life at the moment. So yeah, that's who I am.
Not a bad way to be. I kind of, because I do the usual Googling of a person before I interview them. And obviously, as mentioned, we have like a long-standing like knowing of each other. So I think so. Like I know your work, and then I was just like, oh, it's J.L.Corbett. And then I realized halfway through, I was like, I have no idea what J.L. stands for.
Yeah, I'll tell you
like,
once we stop recording, but I like to keep it kind of separate online.
That's your mystery.
Yeah, my real life and my internet life.
That's fair enough to do. It reminded me of kind of like Prince or Cher. It's like I feel like not enough writers now have a pen name.
Yeah, it's Prince, Cher, and me. Like we're completely on the same level.
Just across the board.
Yeah.
Whenever they're doing like rock and roll Hall of Fames, it's just like
absolutely.
I'm just tuning in every year to find out when J.L.Corbett's going to be announced. But yeah, so I mean, as we mentioned, we kind of I was trying to think how I know you.
I don't know.
Right?
Like I was thinking about this last night. I was trying to think back in my head, and I know that years ago I was doing zine reviews for a website called Syndicated Zine Reviews, and I remember asking you as part of my sort of interview for that job, do you mind if I review one of your Null Point zines?
Yeah.
But that sort of implies that I knew you before then because I need to ask you, but I don't know how.
Yeah, I vivid because that was like Null Point had only been going for a very short time at that point.
I think it was like issue number 2 or 3 or something like that.
Yeah, it was like I think it was the tech issue, and it was that's like literally issue number like 3. So this was like 2017 that we were doing this.
Well, that's when I kind of started with like writing, like taking writing seriously. So that kind of makes sense.
But I feel did you do a zine fair at Lincoln?
At Lincoln?
Yeah. Because I feel like
I think I might have done one. I did a few sort of across the north. There was one that was really, really unsuccessful where like I sold nothing. That might have been Lincoln.
Lincoln is not known for its masses of people and their interest in zines. I mean, that's a lie. I know lots of people are interested in zines, but it's such a small group that when you bring it to the wider Lincoln audience is just like, I still don't know what a zine is.
Yeah, they're like, is it a book? Is it a comic?
Yeah. It's the risk of weird conservative counties. Just throw them under the bus. But I feel like we were both maybe at that zine fair because I think that was the first zine fair I ever did.
Oh, right. Okay.
Because Null Point was the first zine I ever did. Like I'd never done anything that style before, apart from when I was like much, much younger.
Yeah.
And making like paper comics and stuff like that. But at the same point, I feel like I knew you before then.
We must have met. Well, we did meet before then, but I don't know how. Because we're not really, like, I'm in Hull, you're in Lincoln, it's not that far away, but we've definitely never met in person.
No, I feel like the way my memory works with it is I feel like we were both going to be at the zine fair, and I was intending to talk to you because I knew who you were, and I was like, oh, this is like me starting to do zines. This person knows zines.
Yeah.
I'd known of Idolink in zine format, like
Mm.
at that event, to be able to go, okay, yeah, I can talk to you, and I just never did because of anxieties, which is like, yeah, I'm just going to sit here at my table for the entire thing.
I mean, you could have, like, that zine fair went so badly for me. Like I say, I sold nothing. Like,
Yeah.
I think at that point I'd done a few, like I'd done Leeds, and I think I did one near Manchester, and one here as well.
Yeah.
And they went okay, like as well as a zine fair can ever go. So I was feeling confident, and I said to my husband, then boyfriend, "Oh, come with me. You can sell your artwork. It's really fun. Meet loads of people." And we went, and it was just like
quiet.
yeah, just hours of like nobody.
It is such an. I mean, I think that's a good question, though. I mean, how long have you been into kind of writing and publishing then?
So I mean, I've always been into writing, always. But when I was younger, it was just stuff like like fan fiction when I was a teenager and stuff like that.
Oh,
You
no,
know,
I'm
the
curious.
cringy stuff.
What fan fiction were you writing?
This is gonna ruin any sort of burgeoning friendship we might have.
I mean, that entirely depends on the,
So
I guess, the content of the fan fiction.
it was nothing too weird. So I
Okay.
was writing when I was like sort of maybe 13 or 14, and I used to do a lot of like Good Charlotte fan fiction.
I've never even heard of someone doing band fan fiction.
Well, there you
That's
go.
incredible.
Pioneer.
Band fan. How?
I thought at the time I thought it was really cool, but looking back it wasn't. Like
I don't know. I mean,
I
like, if there's a zine about Good Charlotte and their outside lives in a fan fiction format, I may buy that.
I will not be the person to make that. I've moved on since then.
I'm adding it to the project list. Pop punk fanzines.
I reckon there's a big market for it. Like people in their late 20s, early 30s who are still just really into sort of naughty pop punk.
I mean, my friend Sean is he's still very pop punk, and his favorite band is Newfound Glory, to the point of having Newfound
Nice.
Glory tattoos recently.
Recently.
As in the last few years, he had the lyrics from Newfound Glory tattooed on him, and buys all of their LPs as like vinyls and
Oh
everything like
wow.
that. There is definitely a market for like old generation pop punk just sitting there waiting to be tapped.
Yeah.
That's shocking.
If they did like a pop punk tour, but only let people in who were like in their late 20s
You
or
have to be a
older,
millennial in order
that would
to
be
attend.
incredible.
I'd love it. Anyway, we've gotten sidetracked. Your origins in writing.
Yeah. So I moved on from fan fiction.
Right.
And yeah, I've always sort of messed around with short stories in my spare time and stuff like that. It was probably after I finished uni, where I had a bit more spare time on my hands, that I started writing more fiction and wanted to sort of try and get it published if possible, which seemed like such a unreachable goal at that point. And at that point, like my writing really wasn't good. It was because I think you have to sort of go through that phase of writing really, really terrible stuff and sort of refining it just through trial and error. So eventually, I think the quality started getting a little bit better. Got a few publications, and but while I was sort of sending stuff out to lit mags and hoping that someone would pick it up, I started feeling like I was putting all this work into stories and then just sort of putting it in someone else's hands.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, why am I doing that when I feel like I could just start my own magazine and have a bit more control over it. So that's when I started the idling as like a print zine, and just sort of wrote a short story for it, begged some friends to write some as well, and put out issue number 1. And yeah, I just sort of got into publishing from there and just really liked it.
I find publishing's like, it's such a strange, I don't know, kind of, it's like a term which people use a lot, but it's one of those things of what you classify publishing as, person to person
Yeah.
varies. Like self-publishing seems to have this kind of weird moniker around it compared to, like, you know, agency publishing, or if you're publishing just like through zines, or if you're publishing self-publishing but through something like Amazon's KDP, or anything like
Mhm.
that, that it becomes like an almost umbrella term for just anything in
Yeah.
print.
I think a lot of people still just only see it as traditional publishing.
Yeah.
Like, you know, where you go the route of getting an agent and then they sell it to like one of the big publishing houses. That's definitely the most respectable way of doing it through a lot of people's eyes. But for me, I think, like, especially nowadays, I think self-publishing is so much more accessible.
Mm.
And why not? I mean, if you've written a book and you want to get it out into the world, and you know a little bit about marketing and how to do all that kind of stuff, why not just do it yourself?
I think that's where artists struggle, is no one knows anything about marketing.
Yeah.
We're all willing to learn a lot of things. We'll learn, you know, techniques. We'll learn, you know, how to write perfectly and how to format. We'll go through all of that, but none of us sit down and go, yeah, so if I study marketing and how to sell things. um,
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to just learn as I go. I think I've gotten a little bit better than I was when I first started idling.
yeah,
Like, I just didn't know how to. I had all these stories that people had that I'd published by other writers, but I didn't know how to like get an audience for it.
yeah.
But I think now I've gotten a little bit better at social media, as much as I hate social media sometimes. It's just sort of a learning as you go kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, so when you write, are you more, I guess, because I've had writers on before who have written from a product point of view, essentially, you know, from a, I'm going to write a book and I'm going to sell this book. So is that kind of how you follow, or is it just more along the lines of, I want to write something for me and then I might sell it down the line? Or?
Yeah, I'd say the latter.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I can't speak for anyone else, but for me, if I'm thinking about it as a product,
Yeah.
it just sort of takes something away from it. Like, if I just think of it as, I want to write a cool story, a story that I love and I think is awesome, then that's gonna sell surely once I learn how to market it. But yeah, I don't know. I just think it takes some of the magic away if you're thinking of it as a product.
Yeah. I think there's also, like, with the saying about marketing, we end up in a very rock and a hard place situation being creatives, in that you, like, any person who is creative kind of picks up an idea and thinks, all right, I'm going to do this and it's going to be a unique idea. And I don't think, you know, I think it's going to be cool and all that. And then you're like, who would want to read this other than me? Also,
Yeah,
how do I find those people? Because me as a person, I'm quite introverted.
exactly.
I'm gonna have to.
Yeah,
How would
I
someone?
always have these sort of big ideas about how I'm going to market stories
Hmm.
and stuff, and be like, but hang on, I'm not an extroverted person. How do I achieve that?
I think it's not. I don't know. I want to call it the biggest scam in the world, but it's not. It's like it's someone utilizing their skills to help you with their skills. It's just like having agents is just extroverted people monopolizing introvert people.
Yeah, the introverts are the product
Yeah.
essentially.
It's like, if you're an extrovert, find yourself an introvert. You can probably make money off them.
Everyone buddy up.
It's how you make friends as an adult. You know, you don't try to make friends. You get an extroverted person who comes along and just claims you. into their friend group.
Oh God, that's so true.
Also, it sounds terrifying when you say it like that, but also when I think of friends I've made in the last 10 years, it's exactly like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Just go up to the loud one and sort of latch on for dear life.
I don't think you need to go to. I think if I'm thinking of friends, one of my close friends, Charlotte, literally forced her way into my life. Like we met once.
Oh.
She's the friend of. Oh no, she's the partner of my other friend Brett. We met once on a night out, and then weeks later, she was like, "Do you want to go for coffee? We should go for coffee. Let's do that." And then from then on, has just been part of my life.
I mean, that's a good way to do it, I suppose. But a lot of people do sort of, they find it really difficult to make friends as adults, especially like over the last couple of years where we've all been locked down, and like it's not so much about making new friends recently, it's about just retaining the ones that you have.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people struggle with that.
Do you ever get that thing when you're kind of writing and publishing of finding kind of non-biased feedback, of trying to release and then handing it to friends and worrying about the fact that they are friends, so they may not, give you what you want?
Yeah, it is a worry. I mean, I'm quite stupid in this respect where I don't really I don't really hand off my stuff to other people and ask for feedback,
Right.
because of that worry. I can't think of anyone that I could ask to read something who wouldn't be biased and who wouldn't just say, "Oh yeah, it's great," when it could be terrible. So I'm working on sort of like a collection of stories at the moment. So hopefully if that ever gets put out there, that'll be a new sort of thing. But at the moment, I've only sort of published short stories. So I just sort of let these magazines publish them and sort of rely on readers to tell me if they like it or not. But I don't know, everyone's biased. No one's going to seek you out and be like, yeah, I really didn't like this. So I'm only hearing back from the people who actually do enjoy it. So
that's handy. I feel like at times I seek out negative reinforcement at times, in terms
so
of
you look for people to tell you that it's terrible.
I want someone to confirm that it's bad, because in my head I'm just like, this is awful, but I'm still going to release it anyway because fuck people.
Oh yeah, why not?
And I think I did a podcast previously where I was talking about finding a hostile audience, that every so often you should throw work into a hostile audience, because as much as they're going to tear it to pieces, if they come at it in such a way, they're going to essentially show you all the bits of your work which you haven't thought about, all the bits which are noticeable to like a complete stranger who is in a negative space and is into negative feedback. And you're going to get that back, and yes, it'll hurt, but it also allows you to look at it and go, okay, well, was it about the thing which they've pointed out? If they torn apart the grammar, was it about that, or was it about something else? Because if it's just the grammar, I can fix the grammar. If it's the characters, then okay, maybe I need to rethink characters, or maybe I just need to go with that. And that's the whole point, is that some people are not going to like these characters, some people are not going to like the story.
Yeah, you can't write something that's going to be universally loved, unfortunately. But I think it is helpful to get that negative back. Like I say, I don't really give my work to many people before it gets published, but I did I wrote a novella a few years ago that I was trying to get published, and I thought it was strong. So I sent it to this editor that, similar to you, I kind of know tangentially, never met in person. So I sent it to him to see what he thought, and he's the nicest guy in the world, and he sent me a really long email about why it didn't work,
right.
and what was great about it, but what was terrible. And I think that was, to me, it was really useful to actually see a really detailed breakdown of what I had done that didn't work, and essentially what made it unpublishable. So whilst that book was just a bit of a write-off, I still think about his critiques now when I'm writing, and I think I do take it forward into the work that I do now. So I mean, while compliments are nice, like they're not as helpful when it comes to future writing, I think.
Yeah, I think that's definitely. I think compliments carry kind of like a double-edged, like damage to them. And a friend of mine recently, she does a lot of craft stalls, and kept getting people coming along and going, "Oh, these are really clever," and then not buying anything. It's like, yeah, no, you're really clever. These are really smart. So she made a little sign which basically says that calling me clever doesn't pay the bills. And I think a lot of independent creatives do get to that point of there's only so much, like, you know, you can get 1,000 likes online. It's like, that's great. But if 1,000 people don't buy my book, then, you know,
Yeah,
this means nothing. You know, the exposure isn't worth the effort I've put in to get it out there in
yeah.
the first place.
And this is sort of the weird double-edged sword with Twitter as well,
Yeah.
which pretty much every writer is on Twitter at this point. It's where we hang out. But I find that if I post something like, oh, I've just had an acceptance from this magazine, I'll get like tons of likes on it, loads of interest. Then the story comes out, and I'm like, here it is, guys. Do you want to read it?
Yep.
Crickets.
It's it's such a strange, I don't know, like I tried to compare it to any other thing in life of when you're creating things, people are really invested, really interested in what's going on. It's like if you were baking a cake, you know, you were like live streaming the cake, everyone's like, oh yeah, this is great, you know, keep going, you're doing really well. And then by the time you've made it, everyone's like, yeah, I don't really want cake.
Yeah.
Like, you just watched me.
It's a bit deflating sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
I sometimes think as well it's because with writing, like with books, it's a bit of an investment to sit down and read a book or even a short story. Like readers, like people who love reading, that they'll just read anything. They love it. But I mean like the general population,
Yeah.
they wouldn't. I'd say most of the general population wouldn't really seek out a short story or something like that. So with artists or filmmakers, like everyone will look at that sort of thing and appreciate it and sort of pay them compliments about it. But with writing, it's a bit more of an investment.
Yeah. I feel like
Everyone's got a short attention span.
in that theory, short stories should be everywhere.
It depends how short they are. Some of them push it a bit.
That's what TikTok's all about, right? Like it's just about shorts. Like maybe that's what this is what writers should be. They should get off Twitter, move over to TikTok, and just start dominating TikTok.
Have you ever been on TikTok? Because I haven't.
I have been on it 2 years ago. I think I signed up for TikTok because I had an idea and I was like, this would be funny, and nobody liked it. Essentially, I have a stuffed toy duck, and I was like, I just want to make something which goes against the grain of everything, which is TikTok, which is how I make most of my work, is I find something people like and I do the opposite of it. But I have this duck and I was like, oh, well, if I just did stories about this duck, where it's literally just me quite clearly moving around a toy duck. And I was like, that'd be brilliant. But of course, TikTok's filled with a bunch of like jaded teenagers.
Yeah.
Just, this is just dumb. And this some like old man. But there's like a weird like layering to TikTok, which I think Twitter has as well, which is if you don't curate your feed, you get whatever TikTok suggests. And
I see.
On TikTok, because it's marketed at tweens and teens, what you get is a lot of like over sexualized teenagers because they're all like miming along to songs and, you know, dressing how they want to dress. But because they're trying to attract like other teenagers who are like teenage girls and teenage boys, it's like, oh, well, how do we do that? What do? We just throw mildly attractive teens at them.
Whereas as an adult, that's
you go onto it and you're like,
viewing.
oh, yeah, I don't feel like I should be on this platform. No. And you have to kind of get past that layer and quickly find things you're actually interested in to remove it from everywhere.
I don't know. It seems a bit sinister to me, if I'm honest. Like, but I've never ventured onto it. Like, I've
Mm.
seen TikTok videos because they get reposted everywhere, but I wouldn't like to sign up to the app. Seems a bit, I don't know,
I think
ominous.
social media and creative stuff's actually a really kind of an interesting one. Like I recently put a post up on Facebook because I posted about 5 or 6 things to a Facebook page in maybe the last month, and I went and checked my analytics of it and was like, "Cool, nobody has seen these posts. Like literally nobody. Not even like one or two. It was like no engagement, no clicks, no scenes." And I was like,
Yeah, been
so
there.
what's the point in having a Facebook page? Because I have like 1,000 or so people on it. I was like, how is that even possible? And it's because they're
Yeah,
all like reposts from Instagram. And obviously Facebook goes, oh, well, you've put a linked post, which you haven't directly gone to Facebook for, therefore we'll hide it under things which have people have actually gone to Facebook for, because that's how the
oh
algorithm works.
God.
You have to go and make posts within Facebook to actually get the kind of footing. And I was like, well, I'm just going to delete Facebook then,
Yeah.
because that's not worth my time investment. And I think each platform has like a weird learning curve of what you can and can't do with it.
Mm,
And the same with kind of Twitter. It's like, at least Twitter doesn't hide everything. It's just such a barrage of things that it's hard to
yeah.
kind of get noticed. Um,
I
yeah.
mean, it took me a while to get my footing on Twitter.
Mm,
Um, I think when you first sign up to it, it's very sort of, it's a lot
yeah.
to know how to navigate it. I feel like I kind of understand it a bit more now, but it's so annoying because I really rely on Twitter to like promote my own work and to promote Idlink. Like
Yeah.
I'd say 60% of it all comes from Twitter. But at the same time, I just hate it. Like it's just uh, that I feel really uncomfortable with self promotion anyway,
Yeah. Yeah.
even though I
I
have to
completely
do
agree.
it.
Yeah.
And there's days where I just look at my Twitter feed and I'm like, this is just self promotion post after self promotion post, and I just it gets tiring
Yeah.
sometimes, but I rely on it.
I often think kind of if I'd been born maybe, I don't know, 10, 15 years earlier, of how I would have gone about promoting myself without the
Mm.
internet. Like, and
How would you have though?
this is the thing. I in a way, like I was watching a few kind of documentaries and stuff about kind of old punk stuff and how bands used to get people to go to their shows. And it's like, well, you did flyering,
Mm.
you go out on the street. I'm like, I don't feel like I could have stood in the street with flyers and been like, "Oh, hey, do you want my zine about a potato? Like, buy it from me. Like, where? I don't know. Here, maybe just
Here.
give me cash. I'll give you this book." Like,
I mean, if you did that now, like you would get a very wide berth from most people. But if you did it back then, maybe it would have been a bit more normal.
were people more receptive to being approached with random publications in the street in
I don't know.
80s?
I think if I was sort of born 10, 15 years earlier, I'd probably still be doing zine fairs
Yeah.
rather than doing everything online. But
Do
I
you,
think you can only go so far with that stuff.
do you get involved with like? I mean, obviously we've mentioned zine fairs. Do you get involved with kind of like book fairs and things like that, or do you stick to those kind of more independent ones, like lines?
Um, so I used to go to a lot of zine events
Hmm.
like a few years back. I don't really go to them anymore. So certainly not now with COVID and everything.
Yeah.
Pretty much everything I do is online, which I'm it is good because you can reach so many more people and like people from different countries and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to do more in-person stuff like book fairs and things like that, but certainly at the moment, like it's just not doable. They're
Yeah.
not happening.
I think, yeah, I mean, weirdly, today I'm actually doing a zine fair right now. Like, being
right
sat
now.
being sat home, I'm part of like an online zine fair, which
Oh, that's cool.
I'm doing. And I was like, this is kind of like a nice little balance if I'm coming to speak to someone about publishing and zines. All this. But I'm a weirdly in a zine fair, but I just don't actually have to do anything with it. So it's a lot
So how
more.
does that work?
So it's I'll give it some promotion. So it's Hackney Zine and Comic Fair,
Oh yeah, I know. I've
which
heard of it.
they've done physical ones before, but this year they were like, no, we'll do zines. So essentially, the founder has put up different halls on the website, and then in each like section, there's just like a mass of artist tiles, and then those artist tiles just lead to your shop.
Huh.
And there's a lot of promotion and like cross promotion going on with it, and they're like publishing those things, and I'm published like one of my debut ones at this event, so it gets a bit of like cross promotion and review there, and it's such a strange situation to be in, knowing that I've been to zine fairs and I've been to how draining they are at times to travel all the way there with all your gear and then potentially not even sell anything or get any interest. I mean, mine's weird anyway because I just give stuff away, but because my business model makes no sense. But yeah, it's just like that thing of like, yeah, you're gonna do all that. Whereas like today, this runs for like a week or two, and
That's such a good idea.
no effort is involved. Like, but I don't know. I don't know if you feel this way. But I feel like the zine community is quite strange because it's so
You could
diverse.
just leave it at that. Like, yes, I agree.
it's just I don't know. I don't. I think like obviously you from like a writing point of view, writers have their like how writers work. You have like how they get involved in things, writing advice, things like Twitter is big with writers. Visual artists have Instagram. That's where we live. We dominate those kinds of things. And then you have like Reddit, which is like a mix of everything, and whatever you do, as long as it's kind of impressive, gets like a tick with Reddit. But you get like zines, it's just like everybody's coming at this from a different angle, and nobody knows how to organize any of this.
That's what I really loved about it, though. Like, I'm not really involved in print zines anymore, but when I was, like, I love the idea that you could just go along to a zine fair, like not as someone with a table, just you could go along as an attendee, and you could find like the sort of stuff I did, like short story collections, or you could find like fanzines, which was just like weird fan fiction about the smallest sort of niche subjects, and you should just find everything there. And I thought, this is weird, I really like it.
I'm curious, like, what is the strangest thing you found at a zine fair?
Oh God.
Or what your favorite thing is, perhaps, or are they the same thing?
Probably are the same thing. I know I can't remember what zine fair it was, but I've still got a zine somewhere where it's like a deep dive into Jurassic Park and like all of the themes in the film, and like it was actually really interesting. So stuff like that I find really cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can just find anything at a zine fair. It's amazing.
I think I have a couple which come to mind. Like one of my favorite zines I ever bought is just called Flats in Hats. And it's tower block flats, which someone's photoshopped hats onto. And it's tiny. It's like this big. It cost me 50 pence. And it's the best thing I've ever read.
I literally don't know what to make of that.
I didn't. I just looked at it, I was like, flats in hats. It makes perfect sense. And these flats look pretty good in hats. So
Power to him.
Yeah. I think it was at the same event as well. Like you, I found a fanzine which was all about Police Academy and that series of films. And I bought it, and it's literally just an essay, like 5 or 6 pages about Police Academy. It doesn't even go into themes. It's just describing what's in Police Academy.
Oh, just like a breakdown of the plot.
It's just like, here's the plot of every Police Academy film. And I was like, okay.
That's so weird.
Someone took the time to do this. I think it reminds, like, zines remind me of the internet, like just after the year 2000.
Yeah, early days.
Yeah, like when it was like a few blogs and no one knew what to do with all of the space.
Well, I remember like in the early noughties, you used to get those websites which were really popular where you could like basically just build your own little website in like 5 minutes. So there was like X Pages and Pixo was another one. And you could just like fill it up with whatever content you wanted.
Yeah.
And I just like it's obviously it was very of its time, but I do just miss the innocence of the early internet days.
In a way, I don't know why that stuff kind of died out, like to some extent. Like, because I regret. Well, I say regret. I couldn't do anything about it. Like, I couldn't really get into that because I was quite young at the time. Like post 2000, I was maybe like 12 or 13 in that time frame. So I didn't really have access to the internet. And I think I remember, like you say, like those pages, like Angel Fire was a big one, which was just like a blog post, and most of it was just like weird niche essays about like fandom wikis now, I guess is the closest thing to it. But all of that just kind of stopped happening. And I don't know why.
Yeah, I mean, my theory is because nowadays there's so many people on the internet. Like, if you put up any sort of content, it's immediately gonna get criticized, no matter what platform you put it on. Whereas back in the early days, you could just like, I think I had a blog for a while, and I was just like, it wasn't anything too deep. It was just like how my day had been and stuff like that. But I didn't get any criticism for it, probably because no one was reading it, because the internet wasn't as full as it is now. So I think we didn't have that kind of fear of instant negativity. Yeah. Everything's very polished online nowadays.
I guess nowadays as well, like if you started something, your first thought would be, how do I get this to people again? And
or how do I monetize it?
Yeah, how do I monetize it? And I think that's why kind of when I started doing Null Point, I just wanted something which had no monetization thought to it. It was just like,
they were free, weren't they?
They're still free. It's
been that's crazy.
4 or 5 years, and I just still give them away for free, and I still have to explain to people at events why it's free. People are so scared of free stuff.
Do they think that they're sort of entering into some sort of contract?
They do. It's such a strange thing. Like they're like, now, like, so I sell them via Etsy and like my own site for the cost of postage. Like, that's as much as I can charge for it. It's like, here's the cost of postage. That's fine. And I had someone email me because they wanted someone to the US, and they were like, I've done the math, and you're losing money on this. I was like, excuse me? Like, you're losing money on this. If you charge the amount you're charging, I need to be able to pay you more. I'm not paying you at a loss. I'm okay with free, but I'm not going to cost you money.
I mean, that is a good point. They're clearly an ethical person.
Clearly, but I was at the same time, I was just like, well, okay, I don't really know how to respond to you, because part of the concept is that it costs me money, and that's fine. That's the burden I take on by doing it, kind of thing, because I'm in a position where I can do this. But it's so strange to just outwardly tell someone they can't give something away at a loss to themselves. How dare you give things away?
Yeah, it's like you're just out there trying to do this sort of fun, quirky zine, and then all of a sudden you've got an accountant who's criticizing you.
Would it have been better if I'd like overcharged them? Like, would you have written to me like, you can't charge £5 for this zine? It's not worth
it. Did he take the zine in the end?
Yes. So they took it in the end, essentially because I actually just did a price breakdown for them. I was just like, so I factor in the cost of the zine and the cost of postage into the price of the zine, so I actually don't lose anything. Though I do lose something, I just left that part out in the end. I was just like, just because of the amount you ordered and shipping costs, shipping costs. But it was just so strange having to literally kind of comfort someone in the idea. It's like, look, you're not costing me any money. I've thought about this.
Well, I mean, everything's monetized nowadays, so I can see where the concern came from. Like, even things that seem like they're free nowadays, they aren't. Like, everything's embedded with advertising and stuff like that. And obviously, Null Point is the opposite and kind of pokes fun at that a little bit. So I can see how that would maybe put someone on the back foot a bit.
I do recall the review you gave me for the zine being quite positive and like about that idea of like, this isn't, not about you sort of thing, and that it's free and all this. And I submitted it to another reviewer for quite a big zine publication, and they did not like the fact that I was essentially kind of poking fun.
Really?
Yeah, it was quite a strange thing. And I think it's maybe because of the topic that that issue was. They didn't agree with the topic necessarily because it was about pornography. And it was half tongue in cheek, but half serious as well, because that's how Null Point ends up. Whatever people send in is what I can publish. I can't control all of that. And they felt that I was, making light of it by saying, you may love it or hate it. And it's like, no, you essentially, you've gone at this like from a real critical mindset of I'm clearly trying to exploit someone because it's free and taking other people's work. Like it's created this strange like feedback loop within creative communities that
it's such a strange take as well when you think about what zines are at their core. Like, it's all about the sort of do-it-yourself movement, do it for as cheap as possible, charge as little as you can. It's always just been about getting ideas out there and not about making money. So for them to have that sort of take is a bit strange.
I'll never really understand it, as it were. I mean, like, tell us a bit more about Idlelink. I'm curious. Well, I know a bit about Idlelink, but tell us more.
So Idlelink, as I've said, it started off life as a print zine. I only did 2 issues in print, and then I moved it online. So nowadays, it's a website where we publish like short stories, flash fiction, poetry. We do a few essays as well, but we don't get many submitted. I'm trying to get more sort of non-fiction stuff, but it's a bit hard going getting like sort of finding those submissions. And it's actually publication day today. Stuff comes out on the first Saturday of each month. So I think we've had 10 short stories and poems come out like a couple of hours ago. And it's extremely busy. It's sort of consuming my life at this point. But I'm one of those people who's a bit of a control freak, and I'm now at the point where if I was intelligent, I would take on some other people to help me read submissions. But I'm not doing that because I keep telling myself I can do it all myself.
I can appreciate that sentiment.
Yeah.
It's like, you need help. No, I don't need help when it comes to these things. Yeah, I can do it all.
Exactly. Yeah. It's the millennial way of thinking.
I don't need help.
Who needs that? But actually saying that, I did used to, so we do reviews as well of like mostly independently published books. And I used to do them myself. But it got to the point where I was like, I just don't have time to read all these books for review, come up with a really thoughtful review, and still run the website and do my own writing as well. So I have brought on like an outside group to help me with that called the Todmorden Writers Collective. So that's been quite helpful. So I've loosened the control freak reins a little bit with that, and each review they come out with is good and thoughtful and stuff. So I trust them now.
I think I don't know if that's quite unique, or it's unique to me, of getting a group of people in to review rather than just kind of like being an individual's take of like an item.
It is a bit odd. I think it's a good thing. It's not something I was looking for really. I was just looking for one person to do book reviews. So I think I advertised for it online, and they were one of the people that responded, and they had a bit of a pitch really. They said, look, we're a group, we'd like to read them as like a book group and come up with a review together, so you've got like different opinions in the same review. I thought, wow, I had never considered that, but that is really cool.
That'd be interesting. I mean, I feel like that's the kind of thing I'd watch. Like if that was like a YouTube thing of a
Mm,
group of people running a book club, but it's all independent stuff. Like, oh, this week we're
yeah,
looking at this, and then like chatting about it. That'd be interesting.
it
But
would
yeah,
be interesting.
I mean, I think you guys reviewed my book, Particularly.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
they did.
and
That was the second or third book they did for me, I think.
yeah,
Um,
it's nice to have that multiple viewpoints. I think for
yeah,
especially as we were saying earlier on, it's just like kind of getting that conflict of opinions and getting that what people do like about it, what people don't like about it is really
yeah,
useful.
absolutely. And I think with books and stories, like it's so subjective. Like just
Yeah,
because one person doesn't like a book doesn't mean it's terrible. It just means it's not for them. So I think it with having a group of them doing the reviews,
Mhm.
I think it gives a more honest picture of a book,
Yeah,
bigger sample size.
bigger sample size, bigger audience, different backgrounds, different
Yeah,
views.
exactly.
It helps escape that little echo chamber.
Yeah, and it's helpful for me as well to have someone else on board and sort of ease the workload a bit.
Yes, I mean, having been through AutoLink, it's a lot. it's I think because I obviously knew it in zine format, like, and I know how much that effort that can take to do
Mm,
what you do and what it's become is impressive. You know,
yeah,
you look at it, you
it's
go, yeah, this is a lot. This is cool. I like this.
it's a different type of effort.
Yeah,
Like in a way, I kind of miss when it was a zine and I would just spend evenings stapling and just it feels special to have something to hold in your hands, like
yeah,
an end product. But I guess nowadays it's a different kind of effort. I'm maybe a bit weird in that I do like just sort of formatting the website and getting all the stories looking nice. And I had a thought a few months back where I thought, well, what if I did like little promo images with like pull quotes and stuff?
yeah.
So I started doing that, and then I was like, wow, this is taking a really long time. But I just once the ball is rolling, you can't stop it. So yeah, I do that as well.
I think it's strange to think. I mean, like it's a long term project, that you take on. And I
Yeah,
think I often say that most projects have a 5 year limit in terms of they can't stay the same for 5 years. Everything has
no,
to evolve or change or stop one way or another. And a lot of independent projects do just stop. 2, 3 years in, a lot will go, this is too much. We've gotten too big or we're too small and
yeah,
nobody cares. So we'll just stop. And I think even though personally I don't tend to advertise and I don't tend to kind of promote myself, I think by just having persistency and altering the format, every year or so, you can have a much longer term plan
yeah,
and not burn out, even though it is a lot. Even though it's a different strain, it's like adding little bits. Like with that, it's like, yeah, okay, this year we're gonna add these in, and these will be a thing for a little
yeah.
while until you get to a point where you're like, oh, I can hand this off to new intern and they can deal with all these kinds of things.
Yeah, I think you've got to kind of reinvent a little bit
Mm,
if you want it to be long term. Like you say, if you've got 5 years of doing the same sort of thing and you haven't evolved or anything, like people are going to lose interest.
yeah.
So I like where Idlink is now. I'm really happy with it. I don't want it to stay in this format forever. Like I do have plans for the future and stuff, but um, yeah, it's just about finding the time to make
And
it evolve.
I think I don't know, as a thing as well, I think you kind of have to get it to a point where it's kind of low maintenance around everything
Yes.
else. It needs to become kind of secondary to whatever you're doing in your life. Like yourself, you write. So if you've got time to write, everything else needs to be to a point where you can just like, all right, cool, that's a few clicks and then it's done for the day.
Yeah. I wish I could get to that point. That's a goal for me. Like at the moment, if there's a if there's a choice between Idlink and my own writing,
Yeah.
Idlink always wins. Like I think it's because um because my own writing is just my own thing. So if I don't get it done or if I don't hit the targets I want, then
Yeah.
that's on me. But with Idle Ink, because there's other writers involved and I don't want to let them down. So I think, well, let me just work a little bit longer on this.
Yeah.
Another hour won't hurt.
You put that level of responsibility on yourself to.
It's all self-inflicted, so.
Sadly, it isn't self-publishing, I think. I think for the amount of people who I speak to who do self-publish or self-promote in one way or another, you take I think in a way that's what we don't tell people about early enough when they get into these things is you take it on, even if you're not doing it from kind of like a business point of view, and you just like the idea of it, is at some point you're going to make a sacrifice between your time and the thing you're doing. And if you're not willing to make that sacrifice, then it'll stop. It'll just stop like straight away.
Well, I think with creative projects, you get into it not fully appreciating how much work it's going to be. And I don't think that's a bad thing, because if I had realized how much work running an online magazine would be, I don't want to say I wouldn't have done it, but I would have had some second thoughts. So I think you've got to be a little bit naive to actually get the ball rolling with stuff. Otherwise, we wouldn't ever do anything.
There's it's not, I can't think of whether it's sadism or masochism of just punishing yourself. Yeah. There's a level of masochism which comes in with creativity. And accepting, even when you kind of speak to people and they ask you how things are going or how like work is doing or how you're working, it's like it's going terrible, but that's good. Like that's the point. It's meant to be a struggle. I'm learning lots of things through the struggle. And we'll get it to a point where it works.
Absolutely. If there was no struggle, like, it wouldn't be worth doing. It would be boring.
Exactly. If it was easy, what's the point?
Yeah, exactly.
Just don't make everything about it being hard.
No, I don't think you should go into things with the goal of struggling. But
that's how I start most projects. That's my business model. Go in and be like, this is easy. I can make this harder.
Just a whiteboard with the word struggle on it and just figure everything else out.
I was having lunch with a friend of mine recently who'd seen an installation piece I'd done. He was like, it was the most you thing you've ever done, because you essentially made something, people liked it, and then you destroyed it. Because you were like, people really like this. I should probably just burn this, right? Yeah. And then we'll make something else people like out of whatever's
nice.
Like, that's you all over. So.
I mean, it's quite punk, really. Like to make something people enjoy and then just be like, yeah, well, I'm gonna smash it.
I'm very as a kind of like a round out, I'm very conflicted with punk at the minute.
Right.
As a term.
How so?
Because of the recent Sex Pistols lawsuits, which they've been doing. So
I don't think I've heard about this.
Okay, so the two members of the Sex Pistols, I think two members or surviving members of I think there's three left, is there? I can't quite remember.
I think there's two, but I might be wrong.
Either way, part of the Sex Pistols, not Johnny Ron, have made a TV show about Sex Pistols, and they want to use the tracks within the TV show.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, they've all fallen out over the years. So Johnny Rowan was like, no, you're not using the songs without my permission. So he sued them.
Oh, God.
Which meant the Sex Pistols went to court and about royalties and money and usage.
That's not very
licensing. He lost as well. So it's still gonna be happening in this TV show. And then I was on Twitter and MC Lars, who's a indie nerdcore rapper, made a song ages ago called Hot Topic Is Not Punk Rock, which is just a list.
I know that song.
Yeah, it's just a list of kind of products which are not punk rock. And he was going on about like anti-vax is not punk rock and like starting a thing. I was like, there's these weird like little segments of what people think punk rock is, and it's thrown us around as a term compared to actions which are actually kind of punk rock.
Yeah.
And because I'd viewed both those things, I got advertised socks by Instagram, which had the Sex Pistols Queen logo on them.
Oh God.
from some random company, and they were like $13.99 for a pair of socks. And someone had gone in and like, yeah, punk's not dead. And I'm like, no, this is the death of punk. This is
This is what I mean as well when I say that the internet is very sinister.
it's just one of those terms where I think it's rife to be reclaimed in a way, but it's never been let go of either, because like zine communities and obviously Riot Girl zines and everything which kind of comes along with those is still very punk. It's still very activist, but as a term in the mainstream now, punk's it's just like associated with greedy old punk bands.
Yeah, I think punk can still exist nowadays, but it's maybe in a different form. People can still rage against the machine, but the machine has changed, I suppose.
That's the new Rage Against the Machine now. Just we rage against the machine. It's just slightly different these days.
Yeah.
It's almost like a very British punk album.
Yeah.
It's like Rage Against the Machine.
Parentheses.
Yeah. Parentheses. But it's, don't be rude about it.
I would listen to that.
Yeah. It's just one of those things where I think terminology wise is it conceptually I've been thinking about a lot, and how writers kind of approach things and what we consider revolutionary these days, because obviously we're in an age of information and content and media, and like we were saying, the things you write for yourself, the things you want to write, and that's how I feel art should be.
Yeah.
From my point of view, and when you meet people who are more along the lines of, oh no, it's much more about the aesthetic and the audience.
Yeah.
You're like,
I mean, in a way, it's interesting that people take such different approaches to writing, even though I don't understand all of those approaches. But I'm glad that they're able to sort of do what they want. But yeah, I don't understand the sort of the view of this is a product, so I better hit these points so that I can sell it.
Yeah, I think as a nice tagline for this, I think self-publishing is still pretty punk rock. I
hope so.
There's a level of, as we've said, there's a level of masochism which comes with self-publishing, which has to make it punk rock. No one would put themselves through it just from a capitalist point of view.
Yeah.
Because what would be the point?
Yeah. I suppose it's still, yeah. I mean, it's punk rock in the way that a lot of people still look down on it. but we keep doing it anyway.
As long as there's enough of society looking at it and going, no, I don't like that, then it's punk rock.
Yeah, that should be the criteria for something being punk.
Yes. I like it. I think that's a good point to round this out.
Yeah, I think so.
If we have done anything today, it is establish what is punk rock.
You're welcome.
From two millennials in their bedrooms on the internet. We said this, we determined it. And then, of course, the most punk rock thing to do would be to go in the opposite direction of whatever we said. As soon as we labeled it, and don't spend £13 on socks.
£13?
They were £13.
Not punk rock.
Punk rock socks. It was only available online, so you couldn't even go steal.
Oh, so, ridiculous.
What can you do in this day and age where you can't commit shoplifting to be punk rock?
Oh, that is depressing.
It's a sad time. But thank you for coming on.
It's all right. Thanks for having me.
It's been lovely. Where can people find you? Or is it just idling?
So they can find me on Twitter. They can find me and Idlink on Twitter. If you search for either, will come up. Idlink's website is idlink.org. Pretty easy to remember. And if you want to find my short stories, it's just j.l.corbet.org. So yeah, that's where people can find me.
I'm rocking the .org suffix, I think.
Yeah, it was the cheapest one.
It tends to be the cheapest one, which I find quite strange because I quite like it.
I'm not paying extra for .com.
I mean, I'm old enough to remember when .com was just US. Like
Yeah.
that was, you knew where the website was from because it was a
Yeah.
.com.
I don't know when that changed, but
They just,
yeah,
the
I do
US, they
remember
just
that.
bought everything.
Yeah.
It's usually what they do.
Yeah.
But on that note, we will say goodbye and talk to these guys later. Bye.
Yeah.